Hi, welcome back to the channel. So I am very proud of today's video. Today I want to talk about the fact that I've gone for a whole month without smoking any cannabis. I was going to record this video when I hit 30 days, but I've got a crazy week coming up. My dad's coming to visit and we're going to be transporting things from Asturias to Galicia, and I just know I'm not going to have time, so I'm on 29 days clean, but I still think that's a massive achievement. And it's still a full month, basically. So I'm recording today. I wanted to discuss this topic because for me, it's a hugely important topic, and it's got everything to do with my health journey. Because I'm somebody, if you're new to my channel, I'm somebody who has an MS diagnosis. I have multiple sclerosis officially, although for the past, I think it's nearly 9 months now, I have been carnivore, and since I started the carnivore diet, my multiple sclerosis symptoms have completely cleared up, and I'm basically back to a fully healthy life. I mean, that's what I'm experiencing, at least. My neurologist may disagree, but that's my everyday experience. And I did actually say in a previous video, I'm not sure which one, but like some months back, quite near the beginning of the diet, I did say in a video that because my health was improving, I'd become more aware of my other vices, if you can call it a vice when you're using it medicinally, but it started to become a vice, so a habit. I had started to become aware that I didn't really need it anymore, and therefore that I should think about reducing my consumption and quitting. So the reason I said that, I wasn't close to being ready to stop at that point, but I knew that it was something I needed to aspire to, and I said that in the video in order to hold myself accountable in public to that intention. And it was quite interesting because somebody commented on that video. I wish I could remember which video it was. Somebody commented, "You'll reach a point where you just don't want it anymore." And I thought that was probably true. That rang true for me, because my experience of marijuana is that for example, if you smoke a lot one day, you naturally don't want some the next day. It doesn't keep you hooked in with cravings and withdrawal symptoms in the manner of some other drugs, for example, nicotine or heroin. So it's kind of kind on you in that respect. And so that did ring true, but I just wasn't at that point back then. Because after 8 years of heavy usage, it had become a very ingrained habit, and it is something I find pleasurable. So I wasn't there yet, but bit by bit, as I've been getting my strength back and my health back through the carnivore diet, I have been experiencing my marijuana habit as something undesirable, perhaps even something to be ashamed of, because there's, inhaling smoke into your lungs every day and blowing smoke out into the room and covering everything with dust, getting smoking lines above your lips, yellow teeth, and also the shame that comes with all the judgments of being a pothead were no longer something that the benefits on my body didn't outweigh anymore those undesirable things. So the balance just started to tip towards feeling like I now wanted to stop. And I think that when anybody's quitting any kind of addiction or habit, you've got to want to. And sure enough, that's what happened to me. So I just want to look back on my relationship with marijuana. It's played an extremely important role in my health journey. To be honest, I don't think I would have made it through those early years after the onset of my symptoms without marijuana. It was a total godsend, because marijuana has many physical benefits for an ill body. Also, it has some mental health benefits. Obviously, people will disagree with that, and I'm just talking about when you're in a particular physical and mental state, it can be of help. And I think when used wisely, it can really be a godsend. So, for example, marijuana makes it okay to do nothing, which is absolutely amazing when you're forced to do nothing anyway because you're struggling with profound fatigue or pain or just isolation and boredom. I was used to living a very busy life full of people, and then all of a sudden I was alone, and it was the same four walls every day, and it was intolerable. And not just alone, but in pain and exhausted and no quality of life. And so when I first got ill, I actually, okay, let's rewind to before I got ill. I was actually a recreational marijuana smoker. I don't really drink alcohol. I'm not interested in alcohol. I don't like the way that it makes me feel, and I don't like the way that it makes me behave. So there's just not really a place in my life for alcohol. Once in a blue moon, I might have a small wine or a beer, but it's nothing, you know, it's not part of my life. On the other hand, marijuana has been a big part of my life since I was, I guess, 18 or 19, when I first started smoking it regularly. And that's partly because I'm a huge music fan. I'm a massive music lover, and that often goes hand in hand. The music scene in marijuana is big, and I drink a lot of caffeine, so I'm quite often quite wired and high energy, or I was before I got sick. And marijuana kind of counterbalanced that in a nice way, and it helped me to relax and helped me to get to sleep. So I've always enjoyed marijuana. However, before I got sick, I would smoke it mixed with tobacco, because that's what people do in England. I don't know if that's because it's expensive, very expensive, and so you can only buy small amounts on the street of often very strong skunk, you know, and you only need a little bit of it, and then it bumps up the joint. I don't know. I know in America and Mexico, I lived in Mexico for a few years, and there the joints that were pure marijuana, but that marijuana was quite weak. Different countries, different cultures. But I had an unintended tobacco habit throughout my 20s when I was a social recreational marijuana smoker. And I didn't like that. So when my career started to evolve and I was doing a PhD with a view to working professionally in academia, I realised that it wasn't really compatible with the person I needed to be. So I was not smoking marijuana, and it was during that time that I got sick with MS. So I was not smoking marijuana during my PhD, at least not continually. I every now and again I would go and score some weed, and I would have like a weekend where I just enjoyed myself. And I wrote some of my PhD while I was stoned, so you know, I'm not claiming that I was completely clean, but I definitely wasn't a regular smoker during that time. And that was when I was in my mid-30s, early to mid-30s. And so when I first got sick with multiple sclerosis, I was in a period where I wasn't smoking, and it was actually a few months into the onset of my symptoms that somebody said to me, do you know people with multiple sclerosis often use marijuana medicinally and it really helps them? And I've had this confirmed from my neurologist. It's really basically the only thing out there that can help with the myriad symptoms you have with MS. And that's, a large part of that is pain relief. But along with that, there was deeper sleep. It gave me an appetite, and yeah, it's just, there's a lot of nausea and aching and just really uncomfortable feelings that are hard to describe when you have MS. They're hard to describe because they're outside of the realm of normal, and so these words don't really exist. It's bodily collapse almost, you know, and it's more than just tiredness, much more than just tiredness. And really the only thing I found that brought me some relief and some quality of life was being able to smoke weed. And I remember joking at the beginning when I first discovered this, I felt like I'd won the lottery, and I was going around saying, oh my God, I've got a green card. I can smoke marijuana now and no one can judge me. How wrong I was about that. So anyway, so I did embrace marijuana fully for many years after I became ill, and I quit tobacco. I completely cut out tobacco, and I was just smoking pure joints. And the impact, the well-known impact of marijuana, for example, memory loss, short-term memory loss, were kind of masked by the fact that neurological damage also causes short-term memory loss. So I had a terrible memory anyway, and so I knew I wasn't doing that any favours, but I also thought, well, if I have that anyway, what difference does it make? So I unapologetically started to embrace marijuana, and it got me through those years. It really did. So yeah, I don't want to demonize this plant, which when used wisely can be of such help to so many people. Of course, there's other conditions it helps with, not just MS, but I think MS is quite well known that the two go hand in hand. My journey back to health began before I started the carnivore diet, and it was when I realized that there was an environmental element to my condition. It became clear to me that I couldn't live in the city anymore because it's just such a harsh environment, and I'd become super sensitive to everything around me. And that's where my journey back to health really began, when I was in a much purer, calmer environment. But that wasn't a quick fix. That wasn't the end of the road. There was more there was more to it than that. It was only when I started the carnivore diet that my health really came back to what I would describe as normal. And so I was already on the road to recovery when I went on a big travel trip across Europe with my ex in his van. I knew that it wouldn't be a good idea to take any marijuana with me. He did actually suggest that we could, and we could stash it in his van, but because we were traveling, and it probably would have been okay in Western Europe where the EU borders, they don't check you at the borders, but we were going all the way to Turkey through Eastern Europe and then over to Turkey, and it was just a stupid risk, not worth taking. So I left all the weed behind, and I had a 6-week break. I guess it was my first experiment since my road to recovery had begun that I'd had a period of time without weed, and so it was an opportunity to see how I was doing without the help of marijuana. And that road trip went great. I didn't actually struggle with MS symptoms other than usual kind of, I'd got used to my body being weaker than my previous self, so that was still true, but I didn't have aches and pains, and I wasn't really struggling. And in fact, I enjoyed the break. I enjoyed having more clarity of thought, you know, clearer lungs, and obviously I had trouble getting to sleep. Anyone who smokes weed regularly will tell you that, but I also discovered melatonin on that trip, which they don't sell in England, but you can buy it in France and Spain, and it was in France that I came across melatonin, and that really helped. So that took the edge off the fact that it's not so much a withdrawal symptom, it's the fact that your body gets used to marijuana for helping you go to sleep, and so now your body's got to figure out a way of getting to sleep without the marijuana. So it's that usually re-regulates within a few weeks, but the melatonin really helped. So that meant that I had no trouble whatsoever being without marijuana for 6 weeks on that travel trip. So that gave me food for thought. And when I got back, I went back to smoking, but I just had this seed of an idea that maybe it's something that I could aspire to in the future. But I didn't want to, because I still enjoyed smoking. It was a habit, and I just like the way it makes me feel. So that's just what I like. What can you say? I just really enjoy it. So I didn't stop after that. I went back to smoking. But the real difference, the thing is, it's a very different substance if you're ill to if you're healthy. And the carnivore diet radically changed my state of body and mind by making me strong and healthy again. And suddenly all this marijuana that I was smoking was starting to tip over into, I didn't not only not need it, but I started to tip over into not wanting it either. And there's many reasons why I didn't want it. Chief among those reasons was the fact that it has incurred a lot of judgment for me, being a pothead. And that really, really, really hurt, because I was using it medicinally. I did enjoy smoking it, but I was using it medicinally. And to have to deal with all the difficulties of having a chronic illness that ends your career and just changes your life completely, and then on top of that receive judgments for the one substance that's helping you with that, was very, very difficult to bear. But you can't expect other people to understand, because MS is invisible often. If you don't have disability aids, it's invisible. So, and even when you do, I've spoken in a previous video about somebody I know who actually tried to swipe my walking cane away from me, saying that I didn't need it. You know, one of the hardest things about being a chronically ill person I found was how little understanding there was from the outside world, and how little support, and how much judgment on top of everything else you're struggling with. It's something I still find hard to talk about. And marijuana was a big part of those judgments. So that's not the fault of the plant itself, that's the fault of its demonization in society, and the fact that it's seen as recreational and not given that respect of being medicinal. So I guess I was just, as I could start to feel the difference in my body, I was more and more aware that it's not going to help me to keep being a stoner, perceived as a stoner, and I was starting to feel shame around that. On the other hand, starting the carnivore diet proved to me, and I hope to other people, that what I was saying, because what would happen is I would meet people and it would come up in conversation that I smoke weed, and I'd say, look, I have multiple sclerosis and I smoke cannabis medicinally, and they would go away from that conversation remembering cannabis and completely overlooking multiple sclerosis. That part of the picture, they just didn't seem to take on board. What I'm really happy about is that because I was still smoking cannabis when I started the carnivore diet, and suddenly everything improved and my behavior changed and my memory improved, and all of the things that people were basically saying to me, you know, you think your problems are this, but it's all obvious to everybody else that your problem is your marijuana habit. They could no longer say that. They could no longer level that judgment at me, because here I was still smoking just as much marijuana, but a completely different person. So that's been really cool. I'm really glad for that I could finally prove that I wasn't lying about the fact that I was using it medicinally. Because as soon as my body got better, it was obvious that it was true that the biggest problem in my life was not my pot habit, but my multiple sclerosis, my neurological condition. So yeah, I was really, really pleased about that. Really pleased that the carnivore diet gave me that vote of confidence. And then further to that, it gave me no more reason to smoke. And the person who commented on that video was absolutely right. I reached a point where I was like, I don't want this anymore. I feel like marijuana is a kind drug in that respect. If you're listening to your body, it will tell you, the marijuana will tell you if it's helping you or if it's not, and if you're honest with yourself. Because it does require some discipline to stop any kind of habit you've got yourself into. But the marijuana itself is telling you, I'm not doing anything for you anymore. You don't need me anymore. And I was getting that message loud and clear from it. And so I decided that I would quit. I would just go cold turkey. So I set the day for the 1st of April. I thought to myself, that's a good date because I'd be a fool not to. And also to coincide with the new tax year, which sounds a bit ridiculous, but my whole plan was to, instead of the marijuana, focus more on my career. It just seemed like a good a time as any to have this fresh start, you know, at the beginning of the new tax year. So that's what I did. I chose the 1st of April and I allowed myself to smoke like one last weekend where I just enjoyed myself. And then I woke up 1st of April and cold turkey. So what has it been like? So my first week, the first few days were quite easy because, as I say, it doesn't give you strong withdrawal symptoms or cravings really, but there's a period of adjustment your body goes through. And it was the same when I started the carnivore diet. When I cut out sugar, I had an adjustment period. So same with marijuana. Although I didn't have strong cravings, I wasn't having to hold myself back from going and skinning up. I was using melatonin for that first week or two, and I guess I had difficult sleep. So when I look back through my most recent videos, I could tell that I wasn't looking my best. I wasn't quite feeling my best physically. I wasn't really getting very restful sleep. So I think that's starting to re-regulate, but also I've been watching other videos about people who have given up marijuana, and as far as I understand, that might take 2 to 3 months to fully re-regulate. So I'm still waking up feeling more tired than I'd like to be. And also, your body needs to re-regulate its dopamine because it's been used to relying on marijuana for its dopamine levels, and now it doesn't have that. So it's got to figure itself out again and rebalance. And I'm in that period right now. So I'm doing okay. But I did find in that first week that by the end of the first week, I was starting to struggle with, I guess what it was is that I was still using marijuana to, if not to help so much with physical symptoms, it was anesthetizing emotions for me. I have basically complex PTSD from my years of being ill, and the lack of support that I had during that time very much impacted me, and I had to leave England because of it and start fresh in Spain. But then when I came to Spain, I basically just got re-traumatized. I don't use that word lightly, but yeah, lots of things happened in Spain where it just all the work I'd done to heal my CPTSD got knocked back again by new events, which I've talked about in previous videos. I know I can get past everything that happened in Asturias. I'm sure I will eventually. It was not so much those events in themselves, but the fact that they re-triggered points of trauma that were already very deep from when I left England. So now I wasn't smoking marijuana, I didn't have a buffer against those things anymore. And I guess those things surfaced again, and I was kind of struggling with them again. So yeah, but I also think that I'm doing the best thing for myself in order to address that dimension of chronic illness, which is trauma. It's very hard to have a chronic illness without a level of trauma. It doesn't make you a weak person. It makes you somebody who's gone through something really difficult that's hard for your brain to process. And marijuana was an aid in getting me through those times. And without it, I'm now having to get through. It's like a short-term struggle for a long-term gain. Ultimately, I will become much healthier without it by not depending on it. So I don't experience that as problematic. It hasn't driven me to go back to the marijuana, but it has been something I've had to contend with. But yeah, so I guess I'm still in that phase. And I think part of that is that when you smoke heavy amounts of marijuana, you eventually stop dreaming, or at least you don't remember your dreams anymore. And I think that's because it disrupts your REM sleep. So when I first got sick, it actually helped my sleep, because my sleep was so impacted by my condition that I would literally sleep for 12 to 14 hours a day, wake up and feel like I hadn't been to bed at all. And that was horrendous. I think that was the worst time of all, was when I was struggling with MS symptoms and not using marijuana, because that was, that's no life. I felt like my life was being robbed of me. I was just, it was awful. There was no depth of sleep. There was no refreshment in that sleep. Yet I was in bed all day, wasting my life, losing my life. Horrible. And when I first started smoking marijuana medicinally, that really helped. Now I could get to sleep, and I could sleep a full night, like 8 hours maybe. That would kind of be my average. And then wake up and feel somewhat refreshed. So it was that was a game changer for me when I first got ill. But now that I'm healthy again, now that I'm strong and healthy again, it's not helping my sleep. I realised I wasn't dreaming, and I used to have really strong and vivid dreams, and I really enjoyed them. And I'd love to look back on them when I woke up and try to figure out what they all meant. Sometimes they were bad dreams, sometimes they were good dreams, but I'd had a really active dream life. And then I realised that had stopped. And when Ant and I went travelling, my dreams started to come back, and I was really excited about that. And that was one of the benefits of stopping smoking that I looked forward to when I stopped this time. So my dreams are coming back, and I think that dreams are important for processing trauma. I think that we have to face our traumas. There's no escaping trauma in life. Most of us are traumatized to some extent, and if you block it out, that doesn't help. Running away from it and blocking it out doesn't help. And I think that's what my marijuana use had become since the carnivore diet. I was still using it, and I think there was an element of anesthetizing my trauma, and my emotions. And now I'm back to having dreams again, and I'm back to feeling emotions that I'd rather not be feeling, which have made it kind of hard in the first few weeks of sobriety. But I'm committed to moving through that and developing my own coping mechanisms that are not reliant on an external substance which I have to acquire and inhale into my lungs. So that's cool. I'm okay with that. So I think that's just to be expected and just something I have to deal with, and I'm sure will improve. And the major benefit of giving up, you see, the thing is, if you give up something that's an ingrained habit, you also have to find something to replace that with, otherwise you're just going to turn back to it. So my chosen activity to focus on is writing, because I'm an author, I'm a fiction author, and I've always written since I was always a bookworm, and I was always interested in writing as a child, as a teenager. And I have written a novel which I wrote during the years when I was extremely ill, which I'm really proud of. That's a whole other topic actually. I'll probably do a video in the future about my writing if anybody's interested, or even if they're not, I'll do the video. And this has partly been encouragement from my channel, like particularly Adja Matthews, my super subscriber, who has just given me so much, not just super thanks support, not just financial support, but you've given me, Adja, moral support for my writing. And other people too have commented and subscribed to my Substack and encouraged me to get writing again. And God, that I can't tell you what a difference that's made, because it's another story that I won't go into now in this video, but I've basically was like, look, I'm not smoking anymore. I'm not sitting around smoking, listening to music. What am I going to do instead? I will write. And that is helpful on so many levels for processing things, that creative activity that sort of lifts your spirit. And hopefully at the end of it, I'll have a product which I can market if it's good enough to market. And I'm actually writing a dark comedy loosely based on the events in Asturias that were difficult. And so that's cathartic in so many ways. So yeah, so what happens is when I'm sort of casting around thinking, ooh, I could skin up, instead I'm going to my manuscript and I'm tinkering with it, or I'm writing new material for it. And I'm like over 8,000 words into this second novel, so that's great. And I think that that is a direct consequence of stopping smoking, that I've been able to get back into writing. I'd lost my morale completely for writing, but as I say, that's another story. So yeah, I'm really, really, really proud of myself for this, and I'm proud of myself for proving that multiple sclerosis was the real issue. I'm proud of myself for now knocking multiple sclerosis on the head, and I'm proud of myself for knocking this habit on the head, which was now only going to start to hold me back. So it's onwards and upwards from this point. I might do another video on this topic, because this is a bit of a ramble just about my personal experience, but I think I might do a video in the future that's tips for helping people to give up, or what to expect, you know, just something that gives a bit of value back on the topic of giving up an addiction. You know, whatever value I can give back to you guys who have helped me so much, I would like to do. But this is just my month free of cannabis video and a bit of a ramble. And also I just want to say thank you so much if you're a new subscriber, because my channel is growing at a steady pace, and that's also been something that's really encouraged me to just get to grips with my life. And you know, I've got quite a lot of stuff going on now. I've got the channel, I've got the novel, I'm translating a novel for professionally. So I've got all these creative pursuits going on, which are just filling up my life. And you know, there's just no space for marijuana in it anymore. I can just boot it out. It's not, and I'm not feeling like I'm really missing out on anything. I feel like at the moment, there's just more and more and more creative and professional projects that are coming into my life. Being at Mushroom Manor means, here where I live now, is I'm just much more physically active, because I've got lots of land to walk in and clearing to do in the land. Anyway, so yeah, that's it. Nearly 30 days clean. Really, really happy, and intending to keep this up for, you know, for at least a year before I even think about having a little smoke again, if I ever do. So I want to fully experience the benefits of being fully clean for a long, long time, and just give my health the best chance, my physical and mental health the best chance of recovering from the past 10 years. All right, so I hope you're all doing great, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care. Bye.